Hi, everybody, and welcome. In the coming weeks, I'm going to be interviewing some of the most influential people in financial services, and today I'm delighted to be joined by John White, CEO of Sanlam Wealth. So, amongst other things, we'll be talking to John about his time at the forefront of the UK financial services industry, about the changes that he's seen in the industry over that time, and what challenges he faces as a CEO. I'm also interested to find out how John has dealt with the pandemic personally. So stay tuned. Welcome, John.
Well,
very pleased to have you here. Before we get into some of the more meaty topics, can we just start at the beginning? So I'm really interested to know, how did you get into financial services? Was it a career plan, or like many people, did you fall into it?
Definitely the latter. First of all, thank you for calling me influential. I think that's a sign of age, isn't it?
Yeah, you told me to say that, didn't you?
Yeah. I think the older you get, the more influential your title comes through.
Yeah.
No, going back to your question, it is the classic. I'm afraid I don't think many people, maybe more recently, but still, I think the majority of us who've been in the industry at the time, didn't join with a vocation. To join, we fell into it. In my case, as people who know me will have heard before, that I started doing a degree in psychology and spent the year in the gym instead of in the lecture theatre. And then I had to tell my father that I think I've not done very well at.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, how do you know?" And I said, "Well, first, for a start, I didn't go to the exam." so it's a pretty nailed on. And so he gave me a very nice ultimatum, which was, right, son, either you kind of get out of the house in the nicest way possible, or you find a career that actually has some professional qualifications to it as well.
Right.
So being a kind of 19-year-old, I think it was, I applied to emigrate to California to become a fitness instructor.
Really? Wow.
which is one of those, that was a rare thing in those days.
Yeah.
Now they're kind of everywhere, aren't they? Every gym's got about 10 fitness instructors, but in those days it was a rare thing. So I applied for my green card and all the rest of it, and some stuff there. But while I was doing that, I also applied for some jobs, some proper jobs.
Yeah.
And one of them was for Commercial Union. I'm now part of the Aviva brand, and it was as an accounts executive for life. I had no idea what one of those was, but basically it turned out it was a broker consultant, and it was the first broker consultants in those days that were just going to concentrate on the life and pension side as opposed to the general. And to get through, as part of that, you also had to do your ACII, your Associate Chartered Insurance Institute.
Yeah.
Pre-PFS ever existing or anything else like that, so you had to go through that route. And I got the role. I say obviously because that's how I came into the industry, but and so I fell in. And I think, like most people that I talk to that have been in it a long time, it couldn't have worked out any better. I've had a fantastic career. I'm having a fantastic career. It's not over yet.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to be able to bring up my family and meet some fantastic people. So
along the way,
complete fluke. Right?
So did you ultimately make your dad proud of you, and did you pass the exams in a short enough period of time?
I did. Yeah, he tells me I did. Do you know what did it on that? Was I did get my exams. I got my chartered, although I'm a chartered insurance practitioner from having come through the CII route.
Yeah.
And then I'm on the board of PFS as well. So he was quite pleased with that. The thing that actually did it with my father was when I was working in the running the financial services on an accountancy practice. It's called the old Robson Road space, which doesn't exist, part of GT.
Yeah.
We were the editors of a book called the Tolley's or Butterworth's Personal Financial Planning Manual.
Yeah.
And I took over as the chief editor of that book for about 5 years, and so I had a book with my name in it, and I gave it to him for Christmas, signed by his son. And that was the moment that suddenly academically, because academia was kind of a big thing with my father, and Yeah, so that was the moment that did it. It
Yeah,
was when he had the book with his dad, with his son's name in it. So,
that's a good story. That's a good story.
yeah.
So moving on, John. So over your career, you've worked at accountancy practices, accountancy firms, employee benefit companies, and now you're the CEO of Sanlam. What would you say you've learned from working for those different types of businesses?
Oh gosh, yeah, great question. Loads. You're constantly always learning, aren't you? Basically,
Yeah,
um, so yeah, after the insurance company kind of broke consulting as bits, I kind of went into a regional accountancy practice and did the financial services off the back, and then to a national. I spent 20 years in accountancy practices,
yeah,
but always on the financial services side. So I kind of, again, proud thing is to have made it as a partner of an accountancy practice. There was very few
yeah,
people who actually made it on a non-accounting side of things.
exactly.
Accountancy
Yeah,
practice. So certainly, I learned a lot of skills from a financial and commercial point of view from being in accountancy. I learned the importance of when you're looking after other people's clients, and always being respectful of the fact that you've been introduced that client from other people. Like, it adds another layer of importance to getting it right for the client.
yeah,
The importance of financial planning as opposed to just financial advice, on the basis that you can't work in an accountancy practice and not take account of the tax consequences of things being equally as important as picking the right investment.
yeah,
In fact, possibly more important. You can lose a lot more money by getting the tax implications wrong than you can the product on the investment side.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, you're right. I've done employee benefits as well, but when I started, that was quite normal because
yeah,
most people had a pension plan off the back of it that needed advice as well. Less of that these days. I think the important when after accountancy practice, I kind of went to Arthur J. Gallagher, who were that employee benefit in the main. What I learned there was actually just more about working for an American firm and the different way that an American firm would look at it, and the use of the word kind of aggressive, but in a positive way.
yeah,
And I really kind of enjoyed the two years I had there from the American side of it. And there was other bits I didn't enjoy, but we'll leave
yeah,
that. And then now working for Sanlam, it's looking at again from a different international perspective, from a South African perspective, and the kind of so going from the kind of what would deem itself the largest first world country in the world in the American side, and
yeah,
the Chicago background to kind of being more involved in a developing country. South Africa
yeah,
stuff is pretty developed, but
yeah,
Africa in the general.
yeah,
So yeah, kind of learning from the environments I've been working in as much as anything.
yeah. No, that's yeah, brilliant. That's really good. So, in your opinion, how's the industry changed over the last 10 to 15 years? And what have been the standout changes, both sort of positive and negative, in your view over that time?
Yeah, I think that the positive changes are that push more towards I'll use the phrase financial planning. I don't mean it in the kind of twee way that a lot of people
Yeah,
describe it, but in the truly kind of giving people advice that's kind of holistic and covering all their affairs. It just means that you get to know that client so much better, and they're so much more reliant in a positive way on the advice that you give, as opposed to in the 80s there was that bit of you sold the product and you were in and you were out and you were gone.
yeah,
Now you have fantastic relationships with the clients, and and the clients feel part of that ongoing service. So I think, and I think it's made the businesses that financial advisory firms now have far more stable and far more long term, in just because that change of the way that we get remunerated now, and less reliance on that upfront initial hit.
yeah,
And so the whole that 10 years that you talk about, is quite a really a major change to how
yeah.
we look after clients, but also how our businesses are run.
In your view, John, what's the key challenges that are facing the industry at the moment?
I think the key challenges are regulatory challenges, I'm afraid. So they are. Ironically, even though if we went back 10 years and did this interview, would I be saying the same 10 years ago? I don't know. But I think some of those early the 1990s and the noughties times of regulation, I think you can look back now with that kind of RDR close of saying, actually, that made the industry, the industry at the time, the profession now, better.
Yeah.
And really kind of made us kind of look at ourselves and say, right, okay, how do we want to give this advice, and how do we want to kind of hold ourselves up alongside our peers in professions like accountancies and solicitors, etc.
Yeah.
So I think they were the positives, but now it's got to the point of the level of complexity to that regulation, the level of interference and rights is just too much in my opinion. And it's almost, there is a whole industry in that compliance function and regulatory function and risk function now that is just kind of beyond the pale.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to matter whether you're a bank, an international bank, or whether you're a kind of high street financial advisor. The level of what you're being asked to do and to have in place, I question whether a lot of that actually benefits the consumer and the client at the end.
And is that, in your opinion, becoming prohibitive? I mean, I guess for smaller firms, fees are going up. For you, absolutely. I guess you need to hire more compliance people, more risk people. Is it getting to that stage?
If you look at the ratios of any firm, whether it be the headcount of people, whether it be the costs, the percentage that now goes into that side of the business, without, in my opinion, any really noticeable major change to the benefits of the consumer, which is really what it's all supposed to be about.
Yeah.
Then that there's something not quite right there.
Yeah.
And I think if I think about what do I think is this, that being a Brexiteer, you might believe into things like that. Certainly, MiFID has not helped in the slightest across the business. But even the UK on its own with the FCA has been able to make it really tough on its own. But I actually think one of the big problems now is there's nobody in that in the FCA or in any of the organisations, whether it be FOS or who actually understands the client and giving advice. There's a big missing piece in those entities, that they never employ anybody at the right level and at the right kind of impact stage where they actually have ever done the job.
Yeah.
And I think that is if you compare it, say, to regulation in accountancy or solicitor practices on the legal side or architect or any other profession, they are made up of people who have been chartered accountants, being solicitors, being architects. Mm-hmm. You look at the FCA and you tell me where there's somebody who's ever
why do you think that is?
I don't know, actually. I'll be completely honest with you. It's only something I've just thought of relatively recently. I think I've thought about it during the lockdown period and during this kind of issues around the PI covers, the capital adequacies, the kind of questions that they've asked about longevity of businesses and how strong the businesses are and things like that. And some of the questions that you're getting from the regulators in the surveys that they're asking for just blatantly point to being asked questions by people who have never been in the industry or the profession and the business before. And I get it. I get they are a regulatory side, so compliance and risk and things are equally as important. But to have no visibility. To be bringing people in constantly from from Treasury or from wherever. Just doesn't seem right. I actually think one of the big problems now is there's nobody in in the FCA or in any of the organisations, whether it be FOS or who actually understands the client and giving advice. There's a big missing piece in those entities, that they never employ anybody at the right level and at the right kind of impact stage where they actually have ever done the job.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on something there, John, which was sort of the increased cost of giving advice. And obviously Sanlam as a firm run financial planning as well as investment management. You know, how do you successfully combine the two? Because I'm sure that the client's getting a very good service, but as a business commercially, you guys need to make some money as well. How do you make it work and make it so that commercially, you know, the organisation is successful?
Yeah. This kind of gets into the kind of the field of the vertically integrated and the consolidator, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In a way, I often describe Sanlam because it's got the life company, it's got the asset management, it's got the discretionary fund management from a retail perspective, and it's got the financial planning as well.
Yeah.
So it's got all the component parts to be able to offer clients. And you're right, it would be fantastic to be able to just concentrate on how do you use all the component parts that you've got in order to give the client the best service at the best rate that you can.
Yeah.
And to do that means creating more and more efficiencies in the business, which kind of you look at any national business or actually any business, and there's a constant battle at the moment with IT providers and service providers to try and help us to be able to do that. And if we could concentrate on that, then we will come up with better solutions for the clients than always constantly having to think about how the regulator is kind of wanting us to do this, or the information needs to come to that. And that's kind of an area where the balance is kind of wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. You know, the regulator has said in the past that, you know, it wants all of those 4 different elements to be individually profitable in their own right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, most, or a lot of high-level businesses will not, who've got those component parts, will not be equally as profitable in all areas. And I would challenge, why do they have to be? Because if they're going to be equally as profitable in each of those 4 areas, then actually probably something for the client in that chain is going to be more expensive than it needs to have to be.
Yeah.
If the profitability of the whole is good enough commercially for our stakeholders, our shareholders, etc., then we could give fantastic service on that joining together of all of those components, if we don't have to worry about every part of the entity always being equally as profitable.
Yeah. In terms of the bit that you run, so, you know, what is your vision for Sanlam? You know, and how are you going to make yourself stand out? Because it's a fairly crowded market, isn't it? It's very competitive. So, you know, where do you want to get the business to under your tenure, and how are you going to make it stand out?
Yeah, good question. So the side of Sanlam that I look after is the wealth side, and to put that into context, it's basically any area in the UK where we give advice to the client is kind of under my remit, if you want. So I don't look after day-to-day the life company. I don't look after the asset management side. I don't have to look at the whole. That's fortunately is JP's responsibility to look after the whole. But I can concentrate purely on the side that's giving advice, so whether it's financial planning advice or whether it's the investment advice.
Yeah.
And so what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to get that advice right across our client range. And our client range is pretty big, because the legacy of our client range from having the life company goes very much into the mass affluent area, right the way across to kind of high net worth, if not ultra high net worth, depending on your definition.
Yeah.
And making sure that we have propositions and products that actually solve each of those areas is really important. And also, it's not necessarily it's not the case that all our smaller clients, from a viewpoint of the assets that we look after for them, have the least complex issues. Sometimes they are involved in businesses and have issues that need a face-to-face planner to really get involved with them, and they're happy to pay for that. And sometimes equally our supposedly asset-rich clients are actually quite simple, don't need a lot of touch. So being able to have solutions that allow clients to either have big contact face-to-face or more of a digital offering, and those digital offerings to be valued and really give value is the key. Our USP, if you want, or where we need to be strong, is giving that client the confidence that for those 30 to 40 years, we are the right place for them to be, and we have got all the offerings and the support to be able to see them through that journey. On that, the last point that you made in your question, I think the last 6 months of lockdown has been really, really interesting from the kind of skill sets that businesses like ours now need. And I also sat on a think tank with managing partners of accountancy and solicitors practices during lockdown. And all of us realised that the skill sets that we kind of need to bring into our businesses now are different. So they are people who understand how to drive social media, how to develop new business out of social media. The old days of having the guys who were really and the girls who were in a room that were really good at networking with a glass of wine, and I never mastered how you held the plate and talked to people and give the business card. I was rubbish. I'm probably the one person who's probably glad to see the back of that. But with that gone, and probably never to come back in the same way it ever did, then how do you now generate new business? How do you now connect with your potential clients? I think what everybody's been really good at is being strong with their existing clients. And technology like we're talking on now helps that, because it's more immediate, face to face. It's better than a phone. But yeah, from a new client, how do you get hold of that new client? How do you kind of differentiate yourself as a business?
Just sort of moving on, John. I mean, you did sort of touch on the fact that Sanlam, there is some legacy to what you've taken on at Sanlam. Now, there has been some press recently about you increasing the charges to your appointed reps. I think it's a 20k minimum fee, which was seen by some people as maybe a way of just parting with these smaller firms. Was that the case?
I think if you take the conversations we've just been having, about how the complexity of advice, or actually advice itself is not that complex. That's not changed in a way, but the complexity of having an advisory firm around you and the requirements around you, then what is the case is that it just costs a lot more money. And it doesn't really matter whether you are because we kind of have it all on the basis that I have employed advisors working for Sanlam Wealth, I have self-employed advisors working in Sanlam Wealth, and then we have the network of people who joined us as appointed reps. And in at one point you would always you didn't have to take the same level of fees from the appointed reps because they were more autonomous and running their own businesses compared to the self-employed and the employed advisors that you were providing far more backup services and support services to. Well, now because of that complexity of the regulatory side and the risk side of it, then actually you're giving equal support, and actually it's quite often deemed negative support, unfortunately, as well, because it's the people checking up on the firms, etc. So your choice is actually if somebody wants to be an appointed representative in a network and they want our services, but they still want the autonomy to be independent and do it their way, that costs money for me to be able to support that and to give them that autonomy, but keep them safe that they're not breaching any rules.
Yeah.
If they come and join Sanlam Wealth and become, there and operate to our model and our way and our things, that is much cheaper for me to do.
Yeah.
So what you're now seeing is, and we're not, you've seen it this week. Quilters, have done equally the same thing with Positive Solutions.
Yeah.
I am very confident and I'm very confident that the decision we have made does not make us stand out. We may have made it slightly earlier. We may have made it in a way that was more visible to one particular trade press.
Yeah.
But we have made a decision that everybody else is having to make or had already got to. We only actually took over the network or bought the network 2 years previously.
Yeah.
So it was kind of one of those watch things. So
yeah,
there is a minimum fee if you want. Of what it costs to look after something like that. So, and it was as simple as that.
And I guess, it's your decision, and you've got to stand by those decisions as to how you want to run the business. But I guess you must have sat around and you must have known there would have been some negativity following that. And I guess what I'm more interested in is, when you know that's coming, John, how do you prepare sort of individually for that and as a business, to get yourself ready for that sort of, backlash is probably a strong word, but, you knew that it was going to come. So how did you prepare yourself for that?
I think you prepare on an individual, on a personal basis.
Yeah.
Every decision you make like that, whether it be making people redundant, whether it be increasing fees, whether it be taking away giving of certain advice that you kind of know is going to impact on people, either because they kind of lose the job or you're going to take away an ability for them to do the job that they used to do in a different way. You just have to have that reality check with yourself. Is for the greater good of the majority of the people that you're looking after, is that the right decision? Yeah. Is there? And if I can put my hand on my heart and wake up every morning and feel okay with myself, then then an individual's point or an individual's kind of view on this is their view. It's a bit like this interview, isn't it? If this gets put onto something like LinkedIn, comments. Some of the things that I'll have said, people will go, "Oh yeah, that's a great comment. Really, really believe that." Because it's enhanced their view or whatever else.
Yeah.
And then other people will go, "No, that's terrible. He's just another one of these consolidating, vertically integrated, nasty businesses." So you get that. I am not Sanlam. I am John White. I have my own views, my own life, my own principles, if you want. And I will drive them into Sanlam where I think culturally they fit properly. And if I feel I've done that, and if my wife tells me I've done that, and the dog still talks to me,
then you're winning. That's a really good answer. Thanks, John. I mean, you've talked quite a bit about the FCA and how things have changed with them. I mean, what do you think of the FCA as an organisation?
It's a government organisation. It has a job to do. It has a mandate that it has to do. As I've said before, I just think it's, and it'd be really interesting to sit with somebody from there on a kind of off the record kind of conversation to see if they think they're meeting their mandate. Their mandate, as far as I'm concerned, is to give consumer confidence and to protect the consumer. And I just think sometimes it's gone off piste with that. And I think, there are examples of where the industry hasn't helped itself, going back to the 2007, 2008, and some of the issues that we all had there. There was things that needed correcting and changing following that financial crisis. But they, in my humble opinion, those have gone too far and gone to a point where they now don't benefit the consumer. And so a reality check of coming back and saying, right, okay, what is really important to give that trust, confidence in what we as a profession do, and in 99% of times do really, really well. And do to a really high standard. And for me, how they then help us to portray that and to emulate that would be a far more positive relationship than some of the relationships we've had today.
So are they?
Sorry, the other part, it does take, somebody like myself to put the money where the mouth is. And if somebody came from the regulator and said, right, okay, well, if you want to come in, then you come in. Some of us are going to have to kind of go. And I don't mean in a panel or a committee like they kind of fudge. I mean, actually working in the regulator to say, right, okay, how do we put this right?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that they're actually penalising the many for the few that actually are the charlatans out there? It's the firms that provide really good advice at a good cost, and it's these few firms that are the bad eggs that are actually pulling everybody down with them.
Yeah, I think there is an element of that. I'll be completely honest with you. I think we, as a profession, also don't help ourselves there.
Yeah,
we slag each other off tremendously, terribly. We must be a complete delight for the press and for the trade press when they allow the blogs to go on any kind of article, and it just, and you allow that kind of completely non-identified person to say whatever they want about something they have no understanding of whatsoever. Yeah. Instead of actually concentrating on the things that we do really, really well, and just really homing in on those and promoting of, we have 1 week a year where we promote financial planning, for crying out loud. That should be, it should be all the time for life,
Yeah.
So that for me would be a bigger change. I think what we can do. I don't actually think the regulator particularly. I mean, it doesn't help when it hones in on certain areas like DB or whatever else, and that goes all to town. But there were things that needed to change there, but the profession's pretty good at doing those changes and adapting to new rules. We bring them in pretty quick now.
Yeah, we touched on it earlier on, but it is very well documented that there's a lack of young talent coming into the industry. What would you do to attract more young people into financial services?
I think there is some good work going on that. I think there's two aspects. There is a second career opportunity. I think shouldn't be missed. That used to be quite a big thing in the past with certain organisations really concentrating on bringing things. I saw the back end of an article on something, but I didn't read it to know if that's what was going on at SJP earlier this week. But sometimes military careers are over quite early, and they're great people for second careers. So I think I wouldn't dismiss that, but there has to be that. How do you bring them in? How do you give them that training? Who are the organisations who have got the size, the resource in order to do those training things, or how do we challenge PFS, for example, to be able to do more on that side? I think in my time at PFS, we have done more work on that younger people, bringing them into the industry. It kind of started with giving financial education to younger people so they understood how to do, how to save money and things. And now it's developed far more into that personal finance skills piece of, is this a profession you could join? Actually look at some of this. I think we've done 900 visits this year to schools aimed at the 16 to 18-year-old age group to kind of really promote that internally. There's some great degree courses now. I know people who've been on the degree courses like at Manchester Metropolitan and also at Bristol, and actually they haven't even gone into careers in financial services in the end. But the degree is so wide and so encompassing that it's a good degree for people to have.
Well, I did one. I did a financial services degree, and obviously went into started to be an investment manager, but I was never going to be a very good investment manager, hence got into recruitment. But yeah, it is an interesting one, and I think if you tie that in with the research that we do in our salary and benefits census, in the last one that we published last year, the average overall earnings for a financial planner in the UK is just under 100 grand.
Yeah,
I mean it's really good money. I think if some of these kids at university knew that you could earn 100 grand being a financial planner, that's up there with being an accountant and a solicitor.
Yeah.
More so, and maybe the route to get to the money is quicker.
Yeah. But look how paraplan's grown. You know, look how paraplan has become a skill set in itself. And they are, I have no doubt that a good proportion of those people will become advisors in the future, and they need that little bit more confidence and the extra skill sets to be able to become client facing.
Yeah.
So I do think we are moving in the right direction, funny enough, even though everybody will say kind of, it's too slow, we're losing people, all the rest of it. Actually, if you look at the grassroots stuff, if you look at some of the next gen stuff that Adam Owen's been involved in and people have been involved in, and Sarah now as the new president, is kind of looking at that. There is some really good groundwork going on that I think that we'll get there. But yeah.
I mean, we couldn't have an interview, John, without talking about the pandemic. But before I come to sort of talk about how it affects the working environment, how have you found it personally? And I'm interested to know this because as the CEO, as the leader, I guess there's certain expectations of you and certain expectations of how people expect you to be. But CEOs are still humans, they're still human beings, they're still affected by the same stresses, that we all have. So how have you found it sort of from a personal perspective?
I almost feel guilty for being one of those people that have actually found it good.
Right.
I'll explain. So I am lucky that I have two children, but they are 29 and 26. So they've got their own houses, their own kind of life, etc. So home is me, Karen, my wife, and the dog. So I haven't got any of the issues that a lot of people have had, and a lot of my staff have with young kids and how do you occupy them through the summer and things like that. I'm lucky where I live. I live fairly much in the country, as we've just proved. Our internet's good. I'm nearer to that. So the ability to communicate has been great. I feel as though I've got to know my immediate management team better. Funny enough, we're closer. We spend more time together. It's more concentrated because I'm not traveling. I've also spent 25 years going to London every week. And I've not had to do that for 6 months, and so that's been a blessing from that viewpoint. And so in a bizarre way, and I realize people are going to hate me for it, for me it's almost been reinvigorating. But I am very conscious of the fact that I am not the norm for that. And I can see it. I can see it in the people I talk to. I try to be very conscious of. I can work out now people's stress levels from whether the fact they've had a bad day, whether whether the kids or the dogs have been jumping up or whatever else, and try and allow for that, because it is different. It's very, very different times. But for me personally, it's
been all right. So moving on to more of a kind of the connection to work. Do you think advice is going to change going forwards because of this? I mean, do you think there's been such inherent changes to what we've done for the last, getting up to 12 months that it's inevitable that advice just will change in terms of how we give it, and, as you say, technology and what have you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, advice will definitely change. How you do the advice will definitely change.
Yeah.
The advice itself will be driven by the markets in a way that that's going to be really interesting as well. How we come out of this and the impact of how we repay all the debt that we're all merrily getting our countries into at this moment in time, understandably and rightly. But how we deliver our advice will definitely change. I see a lot more review meetings will take place this way. And if you think about it, that's probably in line from that digital experience we were talking about before with the bionic things, the ultimate hologram type experience, things like that. This is what you're going through now. I think a new client is still difficult, isn't it? Because there is something about that face-to-face interaction when you're really trying to gain the confidence of somebody for a long-term relationship, that I haven't worked out how you replace yet. Now that just could be me, could be my skill sets, my experience, my age is too old to work that one out. But I do think, and also, if you've got real complex issues going on, if you've had tragedy in your life, if you had deaths, inheritance tax issues, or complexity of an acquisition or succession planning and things like that, those kind of meetings you do want to have face to face. I would suggest in the main. But I do think, you will balance off the requirements of that meeting far more.
And what are your clients, what's the feedback through your advisors? What are your clients saying just in terms about how they're feeling about these new processes? Are they on board with it? Are they kind of...
I think from a process point of view, and anything that makes it easier to, not have to photocopy your passports and things like that all the time or things like that, then the clients are very pro. I think in general, clients are currently the second lockdown piece that we're about to go into now is definitely having a mental effect on clients, on everyone from that viewpoint. And so I do think from a viewpoint of getting people to spend time on financial advice for the next couple of months is going to be even harder than going into a Christmas period normally is. Because there is, they just don't want to have to talk about that side of things. When they're just trying to get through. They see the family, and there's no fiscal push currently. You've not got tax year ends or anything until January and things like that. So I think actually, from a financial services point of view, I think there may be more of an impact in the next couple of months from a business point of view than there was in the summer months.
I mean, the other big news today, John, is the US election. We've seen that when we turned on the TV. If Trump wins another term, what effect do you think that will have on the global and the UK economy? I mean, do you pay much attention to what's happening over there or anywhere else in the world, or is your focus more on the UK and issues closer to home, such as Brexit? I mean, what's your kind of view? As a global business, you work for a global business, don't you? So, I mean, what's the sort of the global view on things like this?
No, we definitely pay attention. One, because it's far more interesting than the UK Brexit. I mean, it's just you couldn't. I was a great fan of shows like West Wing and House of Cards and things like that. The whole kind of watching the news and watching Trump is like the best show on the world, isn't it?
I know.
You can't believe it's true.
Well, I said to my wife Helen the other day, I said, if he doesn't win, I said it's really going to change because we're not going to see him on the TV every day. This kind of show that goes along with Trump. If he loses and that's not on, it's going to be really weird. So, I mean, I don't know how it stands right now, but when I last looked at it, I don't know whether he was edging it, but.
It's kind of a stalemate at the moment. Like everything with Trump, it will go on for longer than it needs to. But the answer to your question is, so yes, it's interesting. Two, if you think about the UK investment market, it's more governed by international. You can see it in the FTSE itself. 70% of the FTSE has no relevance to the UK and Brexit whatsoever. It's far more influenced by the dollar and what's going on over there. So we have to keep an eye on it from that viewpoint. Ironically, I think the nearer Trump gets to getting in, then the markets, the stock market actually seems to rally off the back of that. Because he's a deal maker, as he'll say himself. And so actually, I think Biden getting in could have a more kind of stalemate on the markets than anything else. The markets kind of did what they did last week in prediction anyway, so it stayed fairly stable so far.
It's probably priced in as you think.
And as far as our clients are concerned on the financial planning side, I don't think they could give a monkeys. They're just as big a joke as we do, really.
Humour me with this, okay? So if you're gonna jump into your time machine in 5 years' time, where will Sanlam be?
Okay. In 5 years' time, then Sanlam will be still in the UK. Will be bigger in the fact of it is the number of clients it looks after. It will have it will have a whole new back office system, because we're doing that currently, and it will have really developed its platform for bringing in new clients.
Yeah.
And it will, if we're going for utopia, I'll have solved the problem that everybody has of making sure that there's the right service for every level of client.
You
have the right clients in the right service. And we have, that's been the job of the last 4 years that I've now been at Sanlam, and that hopefully will be the job for the next 5.
Yeah. As we've said, it is a stressful world out there at the moment. So what do you do to relax?
Good question. Going back to the very start of this conversation and the time at the gym, I still like to go to the gym. So that's going to be hard for the next. But I like most people, bought a load of kettlebells during the summer.
Okay, you managed to get hold of some, did you?
I have
sold out pretty quick.
I have my dynamic trainer for my turbo trainer for my bike, cool. And I'll do a bit of running in the hills because I live on the Peak District anyway. So I'll get up there. So I will keep myself busy there. Walking the dog, he still needs a walk.
Yeah.
And one of the nice things about lockdown, even though I said about the kids in their own places, and my daughter did come back home for 3 months during the lockdown from Leeds, funny enough.
Yeah.
And that was great to have her back at home for just spend some family time. But that's been the main.
I think you're right, and I think getting outside is such an important thing, isn't it, for all our mental health? Because we've kind of been forced to work in. If you're lucky, like we are, we've got a room that we can work in. But just getting out and going for a run, going for a walk the dog, whatever it is, get out on your bike. I think it's so important for your mental health just to get out there and get some fresh air. And I've found that tremendously beneficial. And you can do more of it as well. Being at home, you can think, well, do you know what? I'll go for a run at lunchtime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you could put anything into room 101, what would it be?
Oh, God, you're supposed to give people a heads up for that question, are you? What would I put? I would put our ability to constantly slag each other off into one. Yeah. I really can't emphasize enough the negativity. And I think I get that it's part of the Twitter world and the social media world is the negative that comes with that. But I really do hope that we can all start to encourage each other, particularly in these kind of without being kind of too dramatic about it. And still stay being a northern lad, so I'll still say feel hard on it, but without being too soft about it. These are difficult times. We all need to support each other mentally and all the rest of it. And just by thinking twice when we're going to say something negative about the other person, just because it's almost like a football team, isn't it? You as a Liverpool fan, I will always struggle to say something nice about Manchester United. But we have to find a way of we're all in it together. We're all trying to do something that all our clients need. We've already said there's not enough people in the industry, so there's more than enough to go around for all of us. Yeah. So why are we constantly bickering at each other or slagging each other off? So that'd be mine.
It was fantastic. Thank you for agreeing to do it. I think it worked really well.
Let's see if the FCA offer me a job now.
Well, I was going to say you were sort of teeing that up quite nicely, so we'll have a chat. But no, that's really good, John. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Cheers. See you later.
Bye. See ya. Bye.